Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Pond, awards editor at TheWrap, and we're so happy to have you here for a special panel devoted to 6 of the shortlisted composers in the Oscars Best Original Score category. We're going to start by showing some clips to showcase the 6 shortlisted scores, and then we'll have a conversation with composers Terence Blanchard, Dustin O'Halloran, Lolita Ritmanis, Emile Mosseri, Ludwig Göransson, and John Debney. As always, we invite the audience to participate in the live chat during the Q&A. And before I introduce our guests, here are some clips to highlight the film scores.
It was so damn important. It's about what this war is all about. There it is. There it is. It was an accident. No bad blood. Accident. I forgive you. You hear that? I forgive you. No bad blood. Come on. Come on. Oh, come on. I forgive you. God is love. Love is God. Come on. You got me now. You got me good. Ain't no thing. I know you, blood. I died for you, blood.
Listen, let go. If anything goes wrong, I'm right here. It's okay. Come on. Easy. Be careful. My name is Journey.
I'm Buddy. Buddy 3000.
And this is Edison.
Ow. I'm okay. Ow. I'm okay.
Hi. Why didn't you work for my grandfather?
I've always worked. Just needed someone to believe.
That's it.
That's it.
Believe. It collapse the wave function. It must have been part of Grandpa Jay's formula. It works. Because we believe.
But of course we believe. He's hovering above your head. He's hovering above your head.
Be careful.
Bingo! Who's there, my workshop? What are you doing up here?
It was a sea lizard. 6 feet long. Days it took to dig it out, clean it. I was only 11 years old. It's in the British Museum. That one was special.
Miss Annie. I've often heard your reputation discussed in the Geographical Society in London.
Is there something you wanted, sir?
My wife, she hasn't been at all well of late. She suffers from melancholia. I want her to walk the shoreline with you, learn from you.
I'm not looking for an apprentice.
I would pay a premium for a private audience.
It's not easy work.
Don't like the water. What is it?
Cheap tourist fodder.
Beautiful.
It pleases me you struck up a friendship together.
What is it? Something? Nothing?
I don't want to go back to the life I had before you.
What about my life?
All I have for you is a word. Tenet. It'll open the right doors, some of the wrong ones, too. Use it carefully.
To do what I do, I need some idea of the threat we face.
As I understand it, we're trying to prevent World War III.
I'm not saying Armageddon here.
No. Something worse.
I gather you have an interest in a certain Russian national.
Why'd you bring me in?
You really want to know? He can communicate with the future.
Time travel.
No. Inversion.
Aim it and pull the trigger. You're not shooting the bullet, you're catching it.
Whoa.
Well, I've seen too much.
Well, we'll try and keep up.
Your duty transcends national interests. This is about survival.
Seems bold.
Bold, I'm fine with. I thought you were going to say nuts.
This is where our worlds collide.
How would you like to die?
Old.
You chose the wrong profession.
Well, what happened here?
Hasn't happened yet.
There are people in the future who need us. I need Tenet.
We need to save them here and now.
This reversing the flow of time. Doesn't us being here now mean it never happened? You want to crash a plane?
But not from the air. No one's so dramatic.
Well, how big a plane?
That part is a little dramatic.
David, look! They're wheels! Wheels?
여기 대체 어디야?
집이지?
우리 새로 시작한다고 그랬잖아. 이게 그거야.
아빠는 빅 가든 하나 만들 거야.
What a wonderful day to be in the house of the Lord. If you're here with us for the first time, please stand. What a beautiful family. Glad you're here.
How's your daddy like that new farm? He growing things good, doing things right?
Yes.
미국 애들은 할머니랑 같이 방 쓰는 거 싫어한다던데.
But I don't like Grandma.
쟤는 안 그래요. 한국애니까.
Grandma smells like Korea.
야, 뭐라고? 그랜마 스멜?
우리 여기 있다가 망할 거야. 애들을 위해서라도 한 번 더 생각해 볼 수 있잖아.
애들도 한 번쯤 아빠가 뭔가 해내는 거 봐야 될 거 아니야.
깨라 이놈아.
할머니는 진짜 할머니 같지 않아요.
할머니 같은 게 뭔데?
쿠키도 만들고 나쁜말도 안 하고 먼저 팬티도 안 입고.
We need to find water somewhere. If that soil ain't wet, we're gonna lose a crop.
결혼하면서 했던 말 기억나? 미국에 가서 서로를 구해주자고 했던 거.
기억해.
어이, 프리티 보이, 프리티 보이.
I'm not pretty. I'm good looking.
Welcome back. It's my pleasure to introduce the composer of The Five Bloods, Terence Blanchard, from AMMONITE, Dustin O'Halloran, from Blizzard of Souls, Lolita Ritmanis, from MINARI, Emile Mosseri, from TENET, Ludwig Göransson, and from Jingle Jangle, A Christmas Journey, John Debney. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and congratulations for making the Oscar short list. I guess there were 136 eligible scores. Now there are 15. Lolita and Terence, congratulations on the awards you got last night at the Society of Composers and Lyricists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So before we get into these individual scores, I want to talk about really what led you all to film composing, because I think a lot of you didn't start out that way. Terence, I'm pretty sure that when I saw you and Donald Harrison at Snug Harbor in New Orleans in the late 80s, you weren't thinking about writing film music. I mean, what brought you into this field?
No, film music was not on my mind at all, man. I was trying to be Miles Davis at the time. And for me, it was totally by accident. I was hired as a session player in one of Spike's earlier films, and by a great saxophonist named Harold Vick. And his father was writing the music. And we had to do some pre-records, because I had done all of the other scores. I was playing on Do the Right Thing, School Days, and all of those other ones. And when we got to do Mo Better Blues, we had to do some pre-records for Denzel and the band to shoot to. And I was getting ready to do my first album, man, for Columbia Records, my first solo project. And I was sitting at the piano, and I started to play this tune that I'd written for these kids in South Africa who was massacred. It was called Sing Soweto. And Spike heard it and walked by and goes, "Man, what is that?" And I said, I told him what it was. He says, "Can we use it?" And he just recorded it just as a solo trumpet thing, a cappella. And we shot it. It was a scene with Denzel on the bridge. They get it back to the editing room, and Spike is trying to fill it up with train noises, and all this stuff, and it still wasn't working. And he called me up and he goes, "Hey, man, you think you could write a string arrangement for this, man?" And I lied. I said, "Yes, sure." And I immediately called my composition teacher, Roger Dickinson. I said, "Hey, man, I got this project. What do I do?" And thinking he was going to give me there was going to be some divine intervention. And he said, "Just trust your training." And I wrote the arrangement, brought it in, and I handed it to Spike's father, thinking that he was just going to conduct it. He said, "No, you wrote it, you conduct it." I went, "Damn, okay." I remember 1 is here, 2 is here, 3 is here, and 4 is here, I think. And once I did it and finished it, Spike, he came over to me and he said, "You got a future in this business." And he called me to do Jungle Fever. And even when I did Jungle Fever, I thought that was a one-off. I thought he was just trying to, give me some encouragement or whatever, because I knew Malcolm X was coming up, and I had no idea. I thought he was going to find some established guy to do Malcolm X, but he called me up and he said, "Listen, man, I want you to do Malcolm X." And literally in between Jungle Fever and Malcolm X, I did a huge crash course of studying scores, watching films, and going back and pulling out scores and learning more about orchestration.
Yeah, right. Dustin, how did you get involved? I mean, you started more in bands, right?
Yeah, I had a band for a long time, and the way I sort of crept in was I was living in Italy, and I was working on some solo piano music, and Sofia Coppola asked me to write a few pieces of music for Marie Antoinette, and that was kind of the entry into it. And then it just slowly just started kind of getting more and more into it. I always loved film music and Morricone and a lot of the classics. Yeah, it's kind of I wasn't really sure if that was something that I wanted to go deeper into, but as I've always sort of worked on my own music as well, and it's just sort of evolved, and just trying to stay inspired. And I love the collaboration of it. It's always good between making records.
Right. Now, Emile, you had a similar journey from a band to film music, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I grew up playing in bands and playing piano, and then I've been scoring films for years and years, but like more short films for friends and some indie features. And then a few years ago, there was one filmmaker in particular named Terence who he made a music video for my band, and I'd scored some films for him over the years, and then he got a show picked up on TV, and then from there I moved out to LA right around the time that I was working on that show. So from there I sort of dove more wholeheartedly into the film space, which has been a joy.
Yeah. Now, Lolita, you were actually studying film composing at a fairly early age, right?
Absolutely. I moved down to up to Los Angeles when I was about 17. I graduated from high school and went to a school called the Grove School of Music, where there was so much magic happening. Guest teachers like Henry Mancini and Lalo Schifrin. It was an incredible time. And straight out of school, I was able to get a job in the music libraries of different studios. So I was a fly on the wall for George Delarue sessions and Bill Conti. And anyway, eventually that led to orchestrating and working for Michael Kamen, Basil Polidorus, and my mentor, Shirley Walker, who basically, when I started working for Shirley is when I was able to get my first big screen credits in the animation realm.
Mm-hmm. Right. Ludwig, how about you? I mean, you actually studied film composition at USC, right?
Yeah, I went from at a very early age wanting to be Thomas Ravelli, who was the goalkeeper for the Swedish soccer team in 1994. From that to wanting to be Kirk Hammett, Metallica lead guitarist, and then to Pat Metheny, and then to Danny Elfman. And I think one of the things I just like, I love playing my instrument, but I also love to write music, and I love to write any different style of genre of music. And I kind of figure out that in film scoring, depending on what project it is, you can kind of move around in any type of genre. And so I set my goals to come to LA and study film scoring at USC. And I moved to the States, and it was a great school. Like, all of our professors were working in the industry, and I got some great advice. And right after school, I got a job as an assistant for composer Theodore Shapiro. And he was a great mentor, and he recommended me for my first job, which was scoring a TV show called Community. And that's kind of, and also at school at USC, this was before Community, before my job as an assistant at USC, I met a director named Ryan Coogler, who was in the USC directing program. And we became friends, and I started scoring his little short films. And pretty early on, like right after he graduated, he did Fruitvale Station, and then that won Sundance Film Awards, and then we went on to Creed and then Black Panther. So that's kind of the backstory.
Yeah, right. So, John, what about you? I mean, I know your father worked at Disney, right? So the business was sort of in the family, but what led you to writing music?
I'm most like Lolita in this sense. I was playing in bands since I was, 14, 15. Got into college finally, and was a double major, drama and music. And then I decided around junior year to concentrate on classical music. So I got my degree in composition from Cal Arts, which is a great art school out here in Los Angeles. And then after that, I really got work as an orchestrator. I was orchestrating for many people for many years in TV and in film. And lo and behold, slowly but surely got a couple episodes of different shows. And I've sort of done this, sort of on the ladder of success. I think I've started as an orchestrator, and then I slowly but surely got my own jobs, and here I am now. And they haven't fired me yet, I keep trying to get it right, like everybody on here. And I admire everybody on the screen so much, and I'm just proud to be with you today.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about all of these scores in particular. I mean, I'm wondering, for each of you, were there ways in which the themes, the subject matter, the genre of these films affected the tools you used or the musical vocabulary you brought to these scores? Terence, for you,
sure.
Yeah.
Well, no, surely. I mean, when you start talking about Vietnam and that part of the world, there's definitely a certain type of sound that comes across your mind. But one of the things that's always a constant with Spike is that Spike the musical experiences in his films are twofold. You know, he'll have me score it, and my job in his world is to broaden the experience for people watching the film. And what he'll do on the other side with all of the source material, he tells them that he has a narrative going on with that, you know. So with this film, I knew he was going to use Marvin Gaye as a backdrop. So there was no need, there's never really a need for me to go down that road with him. But what I did do is bring in Pedro. I guess you guys know Pedro. I never know how to say his last name the right way. I always mess it up. Pedro Ustache, I think is how you say it. Great guy, great musician. And he came in and he played the Duke. And he brought so much soul and power to the film that there were moments where we would just let him play and just capture those moments of emotion, and then we would fit it into the score. And it just brought a great deal. I also tried to bring in some ethnic drums that were kind of part of the culture then to mix in with the orchestra as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, it feels like Vietnam has such. When we see Vietnam on screen, we're used to, you know, Jimi Hendrix doing All Along the Watchtower, or Creedence Clearwater, or, you know, or the Chambers Brothers, or the Ride of the Valkyries. I mean, there's so much music is so associated with Vietnam. How do you find your own version of Vietnam music?
Well, I try not to think of it in those terms. I try to think of it in the terms of the sacrifice that those guys gave for us. You know, those guys gave the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms, you know, and I don't take that lightly, you know. And one of the things about the African American experience in Vietnam is that those guys went over there and fought and were professional and did their jobs and didn't come home to a hero's welcome, you know. So I always try to pay homage to them in what it is that I do with these films like this one and Miracle at St. Anne and Red Tails. You know, it's a chance for me to sit down and say thank you. So I'm always trying to write music that's heroic, music that's honoring what they've done for us, because I look at it. I grew up in the 70s, and I had people in my neighborhood who had come back from that conflict, and they had a lot of issues that they were struggling with, and it's still left a mark on my brain and my soul for a long time. And I look at that one scene in The Five Bloods where Martin Luther King was assassinated, and to deal with fighting over there in a war, and yet having somebody who's trying to fight for your freedoms in the country you're fighting for assassinated had to be a very powerful and emotional thing. But they still did their jobs. They didn't quit on what it was they were there to do. And to me, that's true heroism and true patriotism in the midst of all of the oppression and turmoil. So I just tried to write music that honored their sacrifice.
Yeah, right. Dustin, how about you? For AMMONITE has got to be the most restrained, passionate movie I think I've ever seen, and there's very little music in a lot of it. I mean, and there's not that much dialogue either. I mean, it must have affected.
I don't know why I'm here.
I mean, it's a gorgeous score, but it's used so sparingly. I mean, you and Volker Bertelmann. How did you deal with the way it was you know, the style of the film?
Yeah, I mean, it's a film with a lot of restraint. I think when I had made so many records before I started getting deep into scoring, and I always approached it like making a record, and then realized that you really have to tell the story. You have to get into the heart of the picture, and it's always a bit of bringing a part of yourself and understanding the situation and the characters. And Francis was pretty clear that this was going to be a minimal score, and that the sound of the nature would be a big part of it. And in the film, the sound of the waves, the sound of the rocks, it's very tactile. And for me, I was sort of coming off of a few films that were very heavily scored, and it was really, I found it very refreshing that there was so much space, so that, and it wasn't going to be a big score. So in a way, it was almost, those can be a little trickier because every note really matters, and every part you have to really take care of how fragile it is. And so we, Volker and I just, we kind of had to figure out the limits of what that was, because it wasn't something that we wanted to over dramatize. And I think we both brought a lot of ourselves to it. There was pieces of music that I was working on actually for myself, and I knew that I kind of needed to bring a bit more of that heart to this film and to help tell the story, because I think everybody that worked on it just gave so much of themselves, which helps to to bring about these emotions. But no, there was a lot of restraint. But originally, Francis wanted just a single piece of music that could sort of evolve through the whole film, and we realized that it needed a bit more than that. So, but there is a kind of fragments of a main theme, and I think I always grew up loving Morricone and how you could just take a single theme and just stretch it into so many directions and make an entire score out of it. So that was something that was fascinating about that, about the idea of trying to find something that would just resonate for the whole film.
Yeah, yeah. Lolita, how about you? I mean, Blizzard of Souls is, it's a war movie. It's about after the war. It's about before the. I mean, and your score feels very epic. I mean, it covers a huge range, and there's a lot of music. I mean, as opposed to Dustin, you went to a lot of different places on this. How did you figure out how you wanted to approach this story?
Well, the key really is that I didn't figure it out. The director had a very clear vision from day one of filming that it was all to be through the point of view of Arthurs, our main kid, the kid who enters war at age 15, not because he wants to, but because he sees his mother be killed, and because he pretty much has to. So the entire film is really through his perspective. So he goes through such a range of emotions, and he also evolves as does the score. And I think very much because I am Latvian, and that is my parents' homeland. When I decided to fly to Riga to spot the film with Dzintars Dreibergs, the director, and just to be there, to feel the air, the same air, and look at the same night skies, and just feel what it must have been like at that moment to be in this country where you're not asking for it. You just have these big powers traipsing over your lands, taking away your home and killing your people. And how to approach that musically was at times just devastating, and at times it was just the whisper of a muted string or 50 choir members singing a triple pianissimo, or the full 100-piece group letting us feel the gravity of that emotion. And it was so powerful for me, just the whole experience, and working with these brilliant musicians. And I always say, for a composer who is gifted this opportunity to work with the director and the editor also, and the cinematographer in a sense, to get that cohesive oneness. And it's that moment when you feel magic, and all the other awards or accolades are wonderful, but it's that moment when you feel like this is the pinnacle of why this is what I do, why I'm a film composer, to be able to have that joy and that profound experience of working with these incredibly talented human beings, and for them to respect what I have to offer. There was no temp score when I got the film, which for some people would be just, oh my God, so a full movie with no temp score. So, but we found our way, and I'm so honored to be in the company of these brilliant composers. Thank you for having me today.
Sure. So, Emile, for you, I mean, when you were writing the music for Minari, actually, it was largely before they'd filmed the movie, right? You were writing from the script. I mean, how did that inform what you wanted to do?
That's correct. Similar to Lolita, what she was saying about being able to get in early and inherit the film without temp, I was grateful for that opportunity as well. That was the first time for me that I'd worked in that way. So I'd met Isaac, the director, because I'd worked with the editor of the film, Harry Yoon, and the producer of the film, Christina Oh, had introduced us before they started shooting. So we got together and we talked about I'd fallen in love with his script and I'd absorbed it. And then we talked about life and music and childhood memory. This story is very much about his childhood memory, his memory of his childhood in Arkansas in the 80s. So I had just written a bunch of music in the spirit of his script, in the spirit of his film, and sent it to him so that they had it on hand before they started shooting. And they were driving around Arkansas listening to it. And I was involved with Harry, the editor, and Lachlan, the cinematographer. And it helped to have that stuff on hand for them. And then once they were sending me dailies, the inspiration and the creative energy was kind of getting passed back and forth. And it was a dream to work that way for me. I felt really honored to be part of that part of the process, because I felt like the music then had a little bit more room to breathe and became kind of baked into the batter of the film in a way that I hadn't experienced in the past when it like a rough cut or a locked cut.
Right. Were there moments when you saw what they had filmed and you thought, oh, I've got to go back and revise what I wrote based on the script because this isn't what I thought?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of moments where I had to then, extend things or conform or reapproach, rewrite something completely new. But a lot of it was just seeing it kind of fed back to me, seeing the script kind of materialize and come to life before my eyes was really magical. I also went down to Tulsa where they shot and saw them kind of make it. And I you read a script and it resonates with you, but then there's nothing like seeing it, like, what the actors bring to it, what the cinematographer and the director, everything, when it materializes and becomes real and they literally breathe life into it, then it becomes a different animal. And then some of your music is really working and then some of it is not, and you have to navigate that. That's kind of the exciting challenge at that point, is trying to figure out how much of it is demoitis, how much of it is working because you've been living with these demos and these things, and how much of it is like working because it's pure and it's spiritually connected to the film and the story. So that was a fun part of the process, to kind of get into the weeds with Isaac and figure that out at that point. But it helped to like see the first cut of the movie with largely a lot of my sketches in it. It was like that was a dream for me, because instead of the what I'm used to is the knocking the temp music off the mountain. They've been living with Michael Nyman or Johnny Greenwood or who have brilliant composers, and like in their ear for months and months and months, and you have to somehow pry it out of their ears, and that's another exciting challenge, but of a different nature.
Right. Yeah. So Ludwig, I mean, I get the feeling that, the fact that TENET is a movie about, people who are going forwards and backwards in time simultaneously had a fair amount to do with the way you approach the music. I mean, I think the first notes you hear on the soundtrack are definitely being played backwards.
Yeah, it is. And the first thing you hear on the soundtrack is actually Travis Scott's voice going backwards, which ties it into, because the next time you hear it is like in the very end credits, forwards. But anyways, I got involved very early. Chris called me after we finished the script, and we sat down and I read the script, and pretty early on I got the concept of immersion and how big part that had in the movie, and we sat down and had a creative conversation. And a lot of the conversation was about experimenting and how we can kind of come up with a unique sound image and try to create new sounds up from the ground. And it's interesting because Chris Nolan is very tech savvy in terms of if you go to the theater the last 40 years. You go to the theater and you watch the screen. The screen has basically been the same for the last 40 years, but what's changing every 5 to 10 years is the sound and the speakers. And so as an audience members, the way you can play with sound and frequencies is constantly changing, and Chris is very, very aware of that. So we were talking about different audio experiences and different ways of inverting sounds, and inversion is something very interesting for a composer, because I mean, composers done that for hundreds of years. Like Bach wrote inversions, like he wrote a melody that could be played from the up on the page and down, and then down and up, and it was the same piece of music. But if you hear that piece of music, you're not going to be able to tell that it's played backwards. So how do you do that where you play the same piece of music forwards and backwards, but it also sounds like it's backwards and reversed? So that was an interesting challenge. And when it came down to scoring the movie with an orchestra, that was something that I had to write down the theme on the paper, reverse the theme on the paper, and then reverse the dynamics for the musicians. So everything kind of, for them, kind of felt really strange, because they're not used to play have every note be played with really hard attack, for example. And then I reversed it again in the computer. Why we were able to make this work was that we had so much time together, me and Chris, before they started shooting. So I was writing demos every 2 weeks, and then I went over to his office and I played him the music, and we sit down and talked and dissected every little sound and every little theme. And we basically had that process for 4 months before they started shooting. So when he went off to shoot, in 7 different countries and 3 different continents, he had about 2 hours of my music. And he also went out to visit the set on the last for the last scene, the big epic war, the big epic battle, and then they shot that out in the desert. And I remember pulling out there with my wife Serena, and I think when we entered the set, it was like 5 helicopters like going over me. I saw 1,000 people running in full like war battle gear. 500 of the extras was running backwards. 500 of the extras was running forwards at the same time. So that was pretty shocking and very like interesting to watch, and gave me a lot of inspiration how to move forward.
Yeah. Right. John, what about Jingle Jangle? I mean, it's a full-scale musical with lots of songs that you didn't write, but then, the score has such a personality in between all of that. I mean, did you have the songs already, or did you know that side of the film?
Yeah, well, having worked on The Greatest Showman, I had the same challenges on Showman, where you had these incredible songs that were already written. And so, yeah, I did hear the songs prior to starting work on the film. One of the challenges of Jingle Jangle is any musical, I guess, is that you have to, scoring wise, create pathways to get to the songs in an organic way, so they're not terribly obvious. Because a lot of people get turned off, I think, audience members sometimes, by a musical. And so this one, like Greatest Showman, had to be very carefully sort of plotted out in terms of getting into the songs and out of the songs. One of the things I would just want to add to all these wonderful answers that we're getting from my colleagues is that for me, Jingle Jangle, it was very successful. People might think of it as a Christmas film. I think of it as a cultural film. My incredible director, David E. Talbert, the story goes, many years ago, few years ago, he was watching Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, the classic musical from way back when, with his son. And that's one of David's favorite films. And he was watching Chitty Chitty Bang Bang with his son, and his son checked out about halfway through it. And that got David thinking, why is my son not engaging with this film like I do? And it occurred to him that his son wasn't engaging with the film because he was watching people that didn't look like him. And I think I can't thank David enough for inviting me to the film. I see the film as a cultural film. I see the film as a film where we now can do a musical and it's inclusive. And after 5 minutes in the film, we realize that there are people of every color, and it's it's this wonderful ride. So for me, getting to your other question, Steve, this was incredibly important for me to, and for David, to utilize and honor the culture. So in the score, you'll hear big orchestral set pieces. You'll hear African influenced drumming. You'll hear some gospel soloing. You'll hear gospel choirs. You'll hear traditional choirs. So it's quite the melange of all these things, but for a very specific purpose. And that is to show the world that, why not have a musical with people of color? Why not dream big? And why haven't we seen that? And so now, thankfully, I think with Jingle Jangle and other films, Black Panther, Ludwig is a good example, I think. What a wonderful thing now. And that's right from my director. That's what he wanted me to do, was to write the best music I could write, and dream big, and hopefully, give people an experience that they will love 25 years, 50 years from now. So in a nutshell, that's what we tried to do.
Yeah. Well, that answer, John, ties into something else I did want to talk about, which is sort of the state of film composing. I mean, if you look at the 15 scores on the short list, it's 16 different composers. Lolita is the only woman on the list, and there are two Black composers, Terence and John Batiste, who wrote the jazz music from Soul. But you do wonder, is the world of film composing, too male and too white at this point, and are there things that should be done? And I want to address this to everybody, but maybe we should start with Terence and Lolita.
Wow. Well, it's always interesting to ask the persons who are not represented if it's too one way or the other, but I'll do my best to try to answer that question. I think it's all about perspective, man, really. There are talented people all over the place. They just need a shot. They just need an opportunity. And that's what we need to figure out. I've been teaching at the college level for about close to 20 years. And I've seen students from all different walks of life come through my classes with extreme talent, more talent than I had at that particular point in my life, for sure. And the thing that frustrates me is that I don't know how to explain to them that even though they have the talent, they may not get a shot. And that's a frustrating thing that's frustrating reality to have to experience, So I think the question is not for us, I think the question is for all of the other people who are doing the hiring, you know what I mean? Because the only thing that we can do is just be the best composers that we can be, and constantly grow and learn, and do the best work we can, and hopefully be recognized. Now, granted, I have a unique situation because I was picked up by an African-American filmmaker who gave me a shot, but the frustrating part of it for me, frankly, when I got into this business, my first agent was really taken aback by people that he had worked with for years asking if I were Black, because they didn't know me. They hadn't seen a picture of me. And I was taken aback by that as well, because that shouldn't matter, at all. What should matter is, the music that I'm writing. But it just shows you that we have a long way to go. We're struggling with things now in this pandemic that have come to light because we couldn't turn away from it, So we've been forced to face a lot of these issues, and hopefully people's eyes and hearts and minds are starting to open up to what's been going on. I'm delighted to see Lolita. I was happy for her last night when she won her award. I was, I wish we could have been there live. I put in a little chat, I can't wait for the real hang, because, listen, man, this world is a big place. It's full of a lot of different views. And why would we want to have just one point of view all the time? So That's the best I could give for that.
Yeah.
But I really don't think the question is for us. But I'll let Lolita go.
Right. Well, Lolita, yeah.
As one of the founders of the Alliance for Women Film Composers, we were really hoping, Laura Cartman, Miriam Cutler, and Chandler Poling and I were hoping that the organization would be disbanded in 5 years. But instead, we went from about 20 women composers to now we're well over 500 women film composers. I mean, there's not enough room for 500 composers, period, probably to earn a great living in this business. But the idea that I'm not going to focus on the negative, because there is so much negative that I could bring to this, but I want to focus on the positive. And the positive is, look at me. I've been in this business since I was 17 years old. I'm not going to tell you how old I am now, but my kids are probably Ludwig's age. So with that in mind, I've had a very brilliant career, largely because my mentor was a female, Shirley Walker, who was a I'm not going to use some bad explicatives, but good explicatives. She was I can say badass, right? She was a badass. She was tough as nails, and she never really got the full due that she deserved. And she raised and elevated so many male composers. And now for me, I have this opportunity that just, I keep thinking, is this a dream? Is this really happening to me? That I am scoring a film from Latvia. And it's so rare that an international film even gets anywhere near a short list for a general category and music. And because it's probably because it's an epic score, because it's a big score, and people are saying, I didn't know she could do that. I didn't know she could do that. Well, you know what? I can. And there's so many other women composers of color that can do it. And it will benefit your film. Just open the door. Let us in to let us have a seat at the table. Because I also mentor younger composers, and the younger composers are kind of an easy sell in a way, because so many people want to help the new person get in there and get a job as doing additional music, or working for so-and-so and working for so-and-so. Let's look at the composers that have been stuck maybe at a decent level in the mid-range, and let's elevate those composers up so that we can have more women and people of color scoring the top grossing films. Because the perspectives, the viewpoints, the gaze, to quote Laura Cartman, the gaze that we can provide is different. It's not that women are only capable of writing piano scores with string pads, or African-American composers are only capable of doing jazz music. Let's throw all those ridiculous notions aside. We celebrate one another and we lift each other up, and the business will be better for it. And I love my male colleagues. I mean, I'm a Morricone fan. I'm in this business because I heard Dave Grusin's On Golden Pond score, and I cried my eyes out during Out of Africa, and all white male composers. So, you know, let's have some other perspectives out there that our kids and our young women and our young people of color can look up to. I mean, it's changing. It's changing, and it's wonderful, and we can all celebrate one another. So thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for this question. I think it's okay for us to answer, but yes, it's right. Up to you guys. It's up to the gatekeepers out there who are watching. Let us in.
And I think I just want to add something to that. What we should do is have blind auditions. Because tell me if you can listen to some music and tell me if it's written by a woman or a person of color. If you can do that, you're much better than me. Because, you know, for me, like she was saying, it's not even about that. It's not about gender. It's not about race. It's about who could really write, you know, who's bringing something, a unique voice to the project. That's what it's really about. So let's have blind auditions, you know, and see where it takes us in that realm. Because I've had people who wanted to hire me for a project by hearing something that I've written, and then when they found out that I came into the business with Spike Lee, they didn't hire me. You know, and that to me says something about the character of the person that I probably wouldn't want to work with anyway. But it goes well beyond this whole idea of truly being a collaborative effort, you know, because the thing is, man, I want to learn from everybody. I want to learn from all different people's perspective and how they can come to things. So let's try to have blind auditions and see where that takes us.
Yeah, can I just add to that? It's, I guess, I fit the profile of what you were describing, Steve. And but I'll tell you something. I so love hearing Terence and friend Lolita talk about it, because look, I learned very early in my life. You know, we used to have a thing. I used to work for Mike Post, a great TV writer, and very quickly, Terence, you're so spot on. You hear immediately who can write and who can't write.
Right.
And I never looked at it with a color filter on it. You can write, you can't write, and if you're not skilled, you can learn the skill like Lolita teaches, and Shirley, her mentor, taught so many of us. Yeah, well, it's about the music, and whatever style it is. If the music is great, the music's great. And I don't know, I'm just coming off of what Terence said. I think music is colorblind. Let's be colorblind. Let's do the blind audition thing. Yeah, and bring everybody to the party, because that's what music is. Music is unifying. Music is the language that we can all agree upon, I think.
Yes.
You know, whether you like it or not. So I want to thank Terence and Lolita. I'm so proud of you, and all my other younger colleagues here, that I love your work. And let's do it. Make great music. And I think that's what it should be about.
And I think the other thing too that's important is, listen at how John and Lolita are talking. We as composers, we always appreciate what other people bring to the table. You know what I mean? Ludwig can tell you 2 years ago when we were all up for the Oscars, right? Man, we were all rooting for each other. There was no competition. You know, at all of the events, people were tripping at us because with Nicholas Patel, Mark, we were all having a good time. We were all hanging out because we can appreciate another person's perspective on how we deal with these 12 notes in a chromatic scale, right? And the system that we use in this Western system, right? So it always amazes me how, you know, these issues come to us as composers, right? But it's not about us. We're not the ones who have created this atmosphere. You know what I mean? And truth be told, we're the ones rooting for everybody else to enter into this world. I've been a big fan of John Debney's for a long time. To be on this panel with him right now is frankly something I thought I would never ever happen in my life, right? But for it to happen now and to see Lolita here as well with these young composers gives me hope that things can change, you know? But we have to keep doing what you guys here at TheWrap are doing by bringing it up and shining a light on it, you know, so that people can become aware of it, you know, because I don't think it's malicious all the time. Sometimes maybe. I don't think it's malicious. I think it's just an oversight on people's parts sometimes. And I think we just have to wake them up to that fact.
Yeah. And I also want to chime in there because, you know, what Terence is saying, that it's about being aware. And I think also as a composer, like I got my start as an assistant, you know, and a lot of composers, when they're getting movie and we're getting more established, they started hiring a team. They start, you know, they need composer assistants, and you know, I think we all need to be aware. So, you know, when we hire people to our teams and we hire people to work with, maybe give, you know, a person of color a chance, or hire a female composer assistant to let, you know, give people be aware of this question and give more people an opportunity.
And I just would like to chime in that it's okay to share credit. If any of you very busy composers, not necessarily you, but the ones I'll reach through the screen, if you have 10, 15, 20 shows going on, please give screen credit. Go co-screen credit to whoever you're.
Lolita.
It's nothing bad. It's nothing bad. It only raises you up. It shows you that you're a phenomenal person, and that no one disputes the incredible agony that many people, including myself, have gone through for auditions and meetings and rewrites and getting notes from them and never knowing who the them are. Right. So carrying that ball, it's hard. It's hard to be the lead composer on things. It really is. So it's okay to say, hey, this person co-wrote the score with me. 2 names, it's fine. 3 names, give everyone credit. Let everyone shine, and you'll shine even brighter.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Well, I would love to keep talking to you guys for for a lot longer, but I think we need to wrap up on that note. So thank you all so much for joining us. I mean, they're 6 extraordinary scores. You deserve to be on the short list, and good luck going forward. To the audience out there who is watching, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to have a lot more events during this whole long Oscar season. So if you take advantage of our free trial to TheWrap Pro, you can know about them all. You can register for upcoming screenings and catch the ones you missed also by going to TheWrap.com and clicking on the screenings tab. So with that, thank you all. It was a great conversation and great work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
everybody.
Guys.
Yeah.
Love you guys.